Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. For me personally, the quote-unquote goal, if you will, of my psychedelic experiences has always been to live in a more psychedelic daily reality through utilizing these experiences to take action on creating the life of my dreams. I feel many of us know there is more to life than what we see each day. Yet, if you're like me, you probably wondered from time to time what this really looks like and how to go about beginning this process of integrating what we experience in our psychedelic experiences into our day-to-day lives. And this week's guest is a woman who has truly excelled in being able to not only get the message, but also allow it to inform her life in incredible ways. From completely revolutionizing how we school our children in her Luminous Education project, to creating one of the best books I have read recently, Super Wellness, which focuses on how we can take our power back when it comes to our health and more. It's clear she is paving a path that will be remembered for generations to come. And in this episode, we dive into many different aspects of her journey in this lifetime. Her recent Ayahuasca experience that was 20 years in the making, and what that experience has taught her about what she will be creating from here in her life. And as such, this is an episode that is sure to leave you feeling inspired, excited, and motivated to dream big and to take action on changing the world in the unique ways that only you can. So please help me in welcoming the one, the only, Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan to the show. Dr. Edith Ubuntu Chan, I am so excited to be diving in with you today. You know, like I said in the intro, we got to meet at Confluence. I mean, we really didn't meet at Confluence, but we were there together. There were so many amazing things going on, so many amazing people to talk with. I was getting pulled in conversations constantly. And I remember after that event ended, I hit up Alec because I was like, hey, I'd really like to connect with Dr. Edith. And, you know, it's been so much fun getting to know you on our intro call we did. And, you know, you sharing so much of your experience with me. And, you know, we're going to dive into a lot of really juicy stuff on this episode of a lot of how your awakening first started. You know, spoiler alert for everyone, it wasn't from a psychedelic, right? But it was a psychedelic experience that did it, right? Through Qigong and things like that. But you've also connected with psychedelics and these kind of things. And so normally when I start the show, I'll ask people how they got first involved in psychedelics, right? But for you, I want to ask it a little bit differently. I want to ask you how you first became aware of the different reality that comes forth as you start becoming more aware, right? Whether you want to call it non-duality, whether you want to call it, you know, this reality we live in, like you were just saying before we hit record, being malleable. How did this first started opening for you? You know, was it, you know, psychedelics when you were younger? Was it something different? I want to hear everything.
Oh my goodness, where to begin? Because for this type of audience, I think you guys can handle all of it. So
We're ready.
Watering it down, you know,
Yeah.
because at this point, I've recalled multiple other lifetimes, and so it's really like time is not linear anymore. So it's like where to begin, you know? So the real the biggest, I think, beginning that I can pinpoint to is in 2003, this Qigong experience that we were chatting about before we hit record. I pivoted my careers early in my 20s, like shortly after undergrad, because I was working in software and I was unhappy and unfulfilled. I was very good at it. I won the Employee of the Year award and all of that. But I was, you know, fat and sick and acne and digestion problems and all kinds of things, because I was actually, now in hindsight, I realized I was deviating from my true life path. And so I got up the courage to change my career to go to Chinese medicine school. And the reason for Chinese medicine school is that actually way back when I was age 4, I grew up in Hong Kong. That's probably the first moment where I thought, wait, this reality is not what they say it is. Because my dad had a severe back pain. My sister had this ankle sprain where her ankle is always swollen. And they'd gone to doctor after doctor after doctor. Nobody could help. And we have lots of medical professionals in our family, our relatives. We got the best care. Finally, my parents decided to give this back alleyway Qigong master a try. They're like, it seems sketchy. He's in a back alleyway. He emits energy. Like, but nothing else seems to be working. So with my own eyes at age 4, so this is like in the early 80s, I was wearing one of those matching velour warm-up suits, you know.
Classy.
I totally remember that day. And I tagged along with my family to go see this back alleyway Qigong master. And he had a big belly, and I'd poke at it. I'd be like, you have a big belly. And he said, this is qi. This is my dantian. Dantian is a qigong term, this energy that we store in our different energy centers. And within one session, this guy emitted his qi, and I saw my dad's back pain got better. He could move painlessly. My sister's ankle sprain shrank down in one session. So that planted a seed when I was age 4. Where it's like, these adults, they don't really know what they're talking about. Because at that point I said, I want to be a Chinese Qigong master and a Chinese medicine healer when I grow up. But of course they said, no, go to school, get good grades, go get a good job. And so fast forward, I graduate magna cum laude from Harvard with an applied mathematics degree. I get a fancy software job. It's a good position. I get paid well. I'm doing well. And I hated my job. And the people there were fine, but I was not fine inside. So when I got up the courage to switch to Chinese medicine, which was like, wow, that's what I wanted to be when I grow up. Whose life am I living, right? Yeah. So I'm in Chinese medicine school. And in Chinese medicine school, you study all kinds of things, acupuncture meridians and herbalism and Western medicine and all this stuff. But my favorite part in Chinese medicine school is that Qigong and Tai Chi, these are required part of your training, where you're not just in your head memorizing and regurgitating philosophies and meridians and herbs and also Western medicine terminology, all this stuff, but you actually drop into the direct experiencing of the energetic reality. So for the audience that might be new to this idea of Qigong, it's actually very simple. So Qigong is the Chinese medicine term for a meditative breathwork practice. And it's been probably 6,000 years. Who knows how long it's been around. It's simply the practice of cultivating a precise awareness of your attention and your intention, a specific breathing practice, and then a specific posture or movement or mudra or something that you do with your physical body to enhance an energetic circuitry. So if you have these 3 things, the intention, attention, the breathing practice, and something that you're consciously doing with your physical body combined together, that's called Qigong. So you think about it, every time you so you could do like Qigong dishwashing, Qigong laundry, Qigong, even sending emails in a Qigong awareness, right? Qigong just means working with Qi, like being very conscious and aware of the energetics. So life is really a Qigong practice, really, right? Because this life is an energy game. So every time in Chinese medicine school, I got to go to Qigong class, it was my favorite. You always win. How could you not win if you simply step into a state of tranquility and take a deep breath and become aware of the energetic nature of this reality? It's always a win. So it was always my favorite class. So much so that the teacher that taught us in school, she taught more advanced classes outside of school, and I would take those other classes with her too. So this particular day, I'm still in Chinese medicine school. But outside of school, I'm taking extra Qigong practices. For some reason, possibly was part of my chart, possibly planetary alignments, just the perfect energetics at play. For some reason, this particular day, I dropped deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. I had the deepest experience I'd ever had with Qigong practice. And all of a sudden, the whole thing went exploded. loaded into trillions and trillions of pieces of love and light.
Yo, what is up, everybody? I hope you are enjoying the show, and I wanted to take a second while I had your ear to tell you about an upcoming event that I am hosting that I am beyond excited about. On August 15th, 7 p.m. Eastern, we are hosting our next Breathe with Cannabis event, and this month's theme is that of ancestral healing. For those that are hearing about these workshops for the first time, they are a 2.5-hour live cannabis and breathwork ceremony hosted online through Zoom that you can attend right from the comfort of your own living room with an amazing community of like-minded individuals from all around the world. These workshops are an absolutely incredible way for any of you who have been looking to open up the psychedelic powers I speak of often with cannabis on the show to be able to do so, and we want you to experience it for yourself. To find out more info on this month's theme, the breakdown of the event, and to register and save your spot, head to the link in the show notes, and I am so looking forward to guiding all of you into ancestral healing through the powers of cannabis and breathwork. Enjoy the rest of the show.
All of a sudden, I am the size of the entire cosmos. Pure love. And I often say it was pure love, pure light, but actually what I was experiencing was complete wholeness and contentment. I realized that I was home, and I realized that this is all of our natural states. I had never read anything about this anywhere in a book. And I knew that this is our true natural state that I was experiencing. In meditation, often, your audience can probably relate to this. Often it's really good to, if you have something, a question, an inquiry, or something that you want to get clarity on, to drop into a state of meditation and ask in the state of meditation. And so in this state, all my, not just the one question I brought, but all my questions were answered. So it was complete contentment because there were no more questions. There was absolutely no more lack of any sort. Complete wholeness and contentment. It was so ecstatically beautiful and blissful. It's like, wow, this ineffable state. I don't know how long I was there for because it's beyond time and space. And there was no desire to go back to whatever was before that. And yet, from far, far away, there was this voice. And then suddenly it was like, oh yeah, there's a teacher guiding a Qigong practice somewhere in a classroom in San Francisco. And there's some girl sitting in that room named Edith Chan, who's a Chinese medicine student. And maybe this it should go back to that it. And so suddenly this experience of the entire cosmos of infinite pieces of love and light comes back to this physicality, and it was the most absurd, almost painful experience of taking trillions of pieces of love and light, squeezing it into this pretense of a physical experience. And so when it finally landed, all that could happen, this body could hardly capacitate what just happened. And it was avalanches and avalanches and avalanches of tears just gushing down, gushing down, gushing down. And it took a very long time before I could even attempt to articulate what was that clashing of sensations that happened in that moment. And now in hindsight, I would say it was this intense love and appreciation and gratitude, thankfulness that I got to go home and remember who we really are, our natural state of pure love and pure goodness and pure wisdom and pure wholeness and pure contentment. I got to remember who we really are. I went home. And then this intense seeing that this reality is so messed up, it's backwards, it's upside down, it's built on a bunch of lies. I instantaneously saw that this place is built on a bunch of lies. I saw that this place is backwards and upside down. And it was a painful, intense realization. And so there was anger, there was grief, there was sadness, there was confusion. And that experience turned me into a true seeker. because I had to reconcile this certainty of knowingness that our natural state is pure goodness, pure love, pure kindness. There's this contentment, this knowingness that our authentic, true, natural state is so good, so kind, so wholesome. And yet, when we're here, there's war, there's divisiveness, there's so much unkindness. This place is so dense compared to our true original state that is painful, right? So, I'm a highly functioning human being. Probably your audience can relate. Like, you guys are a smart bunch. You wouldn't be into all of these, truth seeking stuff if you didn't have the ability to process a lot of information and function well in this reality. And at the same time, it was like very confusing and intensely painful. It was a dark night of the soul for about 2 or 3 years. So I would show up at school, get good grades. I had a part-time job. I had an apprenticeship. I showed up everywhere and I did all the things of life. And inside, I was quite confused for a long time. That was in 2003. I'm so happy to see that now with podcasts like this, with books, that there's so much more support for these kinds of experiences. 20 years ago, the internet was still in its early days. There wasn't this thing called podcasting. So I went to the local bookstore and started reading all the esoteric books, and I started finding that people had near-death experiences and astral travel and different types of experiences that were similar in quality to what I experienced. So gradually I started realizing, oh, wow, maybe I didn't completely go crazy. Because what happened was sometimes, maybe your audience can relate to this too. Sometimes you experience something so beautiful, so sacred. You almost don't want to talk about it because every time you put words, it feels like it's not quite right, it's limiting because it's an ineffable experience. And if you share it with people that really don't get it, they just look at you like you're crazy or they don't know what to do. And then it's just like, it's a big bummer.
Yeah.
When you try to explain it and people really don't get it, it's even more lonely that you feel now. Right. So, and sometimes to talk about it, if you don't find the right words, it feels like you're cheapening the sacredness of what you actually experienced. So for me, it was a lot of challenges and struggles to integrate for quite a number of years. And then gradually, as I started exploring different holistic healing modalities, not just Chinese medicine, I kept up my Qigong practice. I explored a bunch of different modalities. I had some profound experiences just simply sitting in the work of Byron Katie, asking those famous 4 questions that the work of Byron Katie is about. Is this true? Can I absolutely know that this is true? How do I react? What happens when I believe this? And who would I be without this thought? Questioning and inquiring into my thought programs. I started realizing that we've been MK Ultra mind control, trauma-based mind programmed into a lot of lies here. And so I started dismantling those, and that induced a bunch of other mystical awakening experiences. I traveled to Peru and had some experiences just sitting on a rock. In 2013, I sat in darkroom meditation. It was an 11-day retreat, 9 days and 9 nights in complete darkness, and recalled and remembered many aspects of what I'm doing here, what we're all doing here. Who are we? These questions that your soul yearns to remember fully. Who am I? What is this life for? What are we doing here? All these kinds of things that is so alive in our hearts and souls in this time, especially as the world goes bonkers out there. So I'm so grateful that I have friends like you, Ryan, and your audience. We can just talk about this stuff now. And this is the time of the great remembering. People say, is it the great awakening, whatever, is remembering who we really are and then living in a way that is congruent to our true, authentic self. Get rid of all the lies, all the MK Ultra programs. Let those go so that we can fully express our true, beautiful, authentic selves. And just actually, this week is the 3-month anniversary of my experience of ayahuasca medicine ceremony. And so that was another octave that unfolded. So this idea of an awakening experience, people say, oh, they are awake. They're not awake. It's not binary like that, you see? It's like layers and levels and octaves and upon octaves of refinement until gradually it's your natural default state to learn how to function in this multidimensional psychedelic experience of life while 2 feet grounded on the earth. In my case, raising 2 children, homeschooling them, running 2 businesses, doing laundry, getting groceries, all of it, experiencing the multidimensional flows of information, seeing the geometries of creation while still being able to function, 2 feet grounded, do motherhood, fatherhood, entrepreneurship, run all your errands, show up and be a reliable, consistent, awesome, badass human that is creating beautiful projects in this 3D reality. That's a very advanced practice. And that's the practice that I believe we're all in right now. And why we're here is to cultivate that skillfulness, that strength, that stability. Anchoring in Qigong, they say every human being's purpose in life is to be the bridge between heaven and earth. And to bring heaven onto earth in your uniquely beautiful way. And that is what we're all doing here. So I'm so honored to have this conversation with you.
Dr. Edith, that was so beautiful. You shared so many amazing components in there of your experiences and what you believe is going on right now. I hold that exact same belief that this is the Great Awakening, the Great Remembering. And, Aaron Abke and I, Aaron, he was at Confluence as well. We joke often, I think comedy is the number one thing. There's a reason the jester is the last archetype in the tarot deck, right? And so comedy is my second language, maybe even my first language, right? So for me and my friends, we like to get really silly about this stuff, right? And so I talk to Aaron often, and we've talked about, like, if we were in the Star Wars saga, what movie would we be on right now in the collective? And for a while, I was saying Return of the Jedi, right? Because, we're all coming back, love wins, the whole thing, right? But he's like, no, man, it's actually The Force Awakens, because, we're starting to realize that the powers that shouldn't be, whatever you want to call them, they've never had the power, right? They've only had the illusion, or made us believe the illusion that they have the power, because they're coming from a lack of everything that is, right? Because if they're coming from a state of fear or control, that service to self type negative polarity, then in reality, that is just one big distortion. Because really what's going on here is that there's only one thing that's really true objectively in the universe, which is love, right? Like you experienced, like I've experienced, right? And so when you come back into a reality after having an experience like that, it's almost like, I don't even know the analogy, but it sticks out like a sore thumb, right? The pandemic was a great example of this, right? For those of us that had done some work, right? Maybe messed around with psychedelics, maybe just done other things, whatever, and had a degree of awakeness, right, to us, it was very easy to see through the lies and the deception going on. Because at the end of the day, whenever the government pretends they care about you, that's the first red flag. But second of all, when you see people on, let's say, a stage saying, you got to be healthy, and this is the thing you got to do to be healthy, when they themselves do not look healthy, that is a clear aspect of a distortion, right? Like, why would I listen to someone? It's kind of like this idea, right? Like, if I heard about a mechanic that every time someone brought their car there, it came back worse than they brought it there in terms of condition, why would I then go trust that mechanic, right? So again, like, it was interesting for me, and I'm not judging. I have compassion, right? Because I've been asleep for much of my life, right? But it was interesting to see how people were able to believe these people when in reality the foundation of what they were saying was completely false. And so that's just one, microcosm of a much larger macrocosm of everything being backwards, like you say. I just interviewed Mark Gober a little while too, and we were diving into, an end to upside down thinking and end to upside down medicine. Again, if how we do anything is how we do everything, then if one thing is upside down, why would the other things not be upside down as well? And what I tell everyone is, the most important thing you can do in this lifetime, the ultimate muscle to wield in this lifetime, is that of discernment. I really feel like what our training is here, if you want to call it that, is distinguishing between truly good and truly evil. Or another way to say it is the absence of good, right? I don't know if I'd want to call it evil, but the absence of all that is actually true. I love having these conversations because, like you said, I'm grateful. I'm 33, right? So by the time I got into psychedelics, there was, the internet was around, like, I had seen Joe Rogan, I had seen things like that. So I had some context for this type of thing. But at the same time, like you were saying, there is no way to describe these experiences in words. And just like you were saying, I'm a talker, right? I love talking. I'm a projector in human design, right? So language is really near and dear to my heart. But it's funny because whenever I do like high doses of mushrooms, for instance, right? There'll be this point right after I stop peaking, right? So I'm now like, it's not getting any stronger. As soon as like my system is able to wrangle with the experience, I then get sent into what I believe is the Akashic Records. And so I'll be sitting there, laying on my bed, staring at the ceiling in a complete bliss state, right? I'm still under the influence of the medicine, but it's not like, annihilating me anymore. I can breathe. I can like, I'm aware that I'm a human being again, things like that. But in that state, the second I try to talk, all of it closes off, right? And so it's this funny dialogue I have with either my soul, higher self, the spirit of the mushroom, whatever, where I'll be getting amazing answers to the universe and awareness. And then I'll want to go tell Rachel, who's usually next to me. And as soon as I start to tell her, all of a sudden it all goes away. And my soul, my higher self, whatever it is that's speaking to me, will always be like, you silly kids, you and your words, right? You got to go try to share it as soon as you can. And it's like this funny back and forth of, what I found is that when you get to that level of, being one with the creator, being one with God, whatever you choose to call it, it's a very funny experience, and that's why I feel like we have certain sayings like laughter is the best medicine, or the quote in the Bible, if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must first enter the mind of a child, right? Curiosity, imagination, awe, wonder, hilarity, right? These are the things that when you get closer to God, just start happening. I remember one time I was doing LSD with Rachel, and it was her first time ever doing LSD. I had quite a bit of experience with it. So I was leading her through an experience, and we were at her parents' house, which her parents' house is this beautiful house that backs up to a wildlife sanctuary. Very quiet. You can't hear any chatter. You can't hear any road noise and things like that. And her parents are awesome. They're so chill with everything we do. And so we're out there in her backyard just hanging out. And Rachel had got stuck in what I call a loop, right? So she had been having the same recurring thoughts over and over. But again, because it was her first experience with it, she wasn't really aware of it yet. I've been there before too when I first started doing LSD and things like that, where she was like, hey, did we take acid? I'm like, yep. She's like, have you been out this far? I'm like, oh yeah, I've been out this far. She's like, are we going to be okay? I'm like, yeah, we're going to be fine. She's like, okay, cool. And then like 3 seconds later, she'd be like, hey, did we take LSD? And it was just like this for a couple of hours. Again, it was really comical during it because she realized, like I was telling her, like, oh, you just asked me. She's like, oh my God, this is so silly. But I remember at a certain point, she stood up. I was on my knees, right? Like about to get up. And I hugged her waist. And when I hugged her waist, I felt her soul. And I just could not stop crying, right? And it wasn't like a sad cry. It was like you were saying, like just fountains of happy tears. And I remember just feeling her purity. I always say to Rachel, like, you're so pure of a soul. Like, she's so in integrity. She's so honest. She's just such a bright light in my life. And so when I hugged her, that just got imbued into me. And I could not do anything except cry. And I felt this like cracking inside of me, right? Not in a negative way, in a very positive way, actually, where it was almost like something that had been restricting me feeling that level of love, abundance, joy, etc., was broken. Almost like I broke through scar tissue. And after that experience, it really opened up a lot more in my future psychedelic experiences, being able to attach into that energy and then being able to lead that over into my meditations and my completely sober states. And so it's so beautiful to share these things because for a lot of people, like you were saying, right, they may be fucking around, finding out, they may be doing Qigong or psychedelics or whatever and having these experiences and have no context for them. And so being able to share these things allows people to realize that they're not crazy, right? That this is not something that no one else has experienced, but it is something that's very hard to describe through words, right? We hear these things like Kundalini awakening or getting your soul reformed together, right? Or like soul retrieval. And these are very qualitative things, right? They can be hard of like, well, did I experience that or this? And I think the more we get this information out there, the more that we'll be able to get excited about trying to put words to it. Because I think it is fun as a human to try to put words to it, even though it's a fool's errand. It's still exciting to try to do it, because it's almost like when you go on a first date and you just realize this is the person you're going to be with the rest of your life. You can try to explain that feeling to your friends. They're not going to be able to fully understand it unless they've experienced something similar. But you still want to share it, right? Like it's still part of the fun. And so that's why I love doing these shows so much, to be able to share people like you and, be able to hear how these experiences have shaped the trajectory of your life from that point forward. It's just really cool.
I want to kind of zoom in on what you said about
Mm.
discernment with all the absurdities that have transpired in our world in recent years. Let me ask you this. How would you differentiate discernment versus judgmentalness?
Ooh, I love this question.
I want to ask the audience to contemplate this deeply also,
Yeah.
because we're talking about psychedelics, we're talking about Qigong practitioners, breathwork practitioners. A lot of people have had these experiences nowadays. And in my line of work, I do consciousness and human potential coaching and also Chinese medicine, kind of 50-50 is my work these days. And in Chinese medicine communities in recent years, we saw how everyone suddenly, it's like, oh, forget all the natural health stuff. Suddenly we're really into mRNA and mRNA and I can't
I
even say it
know.
right.
So silly.
Our physiology. So it's like, well, where what happened there?
Yeah.
So and a lot of these colleagues of mine, I know they've had some authentic experiences either with psychedelic or with breathwork practice, with qigong practice, and so on. And yet the discernment is not there. So this comes back to there is a integration that is really important, and also all these different tools and medicines, they are amplifiers. They do blast open dimensional
Mm.
doorways. And then it's like it's up to you how you cultivate and use these tools wisely, or you open dimensional doorways and it leaves your energy system so porous to different energies attaching to you and so on. And I'm sure you've encountered friends that have had those
Mm-hmm.
experiences, as have I. And I was very cautious. I waited 2 decades basically to try ayahuasca and go into a sacred ceremony with it with a very precisely chosen guide who I know to be very pure and aligned, because I've seen in my Chinese medicine practice all kinds of distortion patterns with people that didn't go into the ceremonial space with the perfect guides, with a precise intention, with the cleanest, purest energies, and then honoring and respecting the long journey of integration that is recommended
Mm.
afterwards, right? The whole preparatory process, bringing precise intentions, working with the right guides, working with the right medicine also,
Mm-hmm.
because people think it's just the plant, it's just these two plants and you brew it and that's it. Well, it turns out what songs they imbue into it, who's brewing the medicine, so many factors at play that makes for a huge difference in the experience that you have.
Mm.
Right? Most of all, the pristineness and preciseness of your intention, how respectful and honoring you are of the
Mm.
medicine, pre, during, and post,
Definitely.
you know,
Definitely.
all of that. Yeah. So this is these are powerful things that I'm deeply concerned have been getting misused, and deeply concerned that people blast off into these multidimensional experiences and there's no wisdom, maturity, and discernment that is being cultivated here. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not to be taken lightly.
Yeah. I say all the time that, it's almost like if we think about cars, right? We'll make it very linear and logical, right? Like if you're just getting your license, are you going to get a Hellcat Challenger or a dragster to drive around? No, because you don't really know how to handle a car yet. You should probably start with something like, very basic, like a Honda Accord or a Ford Explorer. But maybe then you get your Honda Accord and, you start driving, you get a lot of experience. And then you decide, you know what? I'd really like to get into racing, right? So then you go to school, right? And you start learning about how to operate a race car and you start going through training and things of that nature. And then at a certain point, you are equipped to practice with a race car, right? And actually go around the track and things like that. But at the same time, when you have that kind of background, you're also going to be very aware to not street race and do things that are going to put other people's lives in jeopardy. And I think this is one of the challenges with the psychedelic renaissance going on right now. It's not that psychedelics are good, bad, whatever, right? Duality doesn't even exist. It's just a construct made in our human minds. But it's not the intro. Again, maybe you could say microdosing mushrooms or something like that, where you're not having a shift in consciousness per se. Maybe something like that could be seen as an intro. But at the end of the day, starting with something like ayahuasca or even a high dose of cannabis, right, can be very traumatizing to your nervous system, because the same way that the same way that all of somatics work, right? You need to kind of like shape your nervous system to handle more and more. And that's why I always tell people before you start going and messing around with psychedelics, spend a good while getting a foundational spiritual practice in order, right? Understanding how to meditate, understanding how to work with your breath to regulate your nervous system, getting your diet on point, right? Especially the diet for ayahuasca and things of that nature. There's, specifics there. But, do everything else first, right? To create that foundation so that then when you go into an experience like that, let's say you start having a traumatic release, right? Well, you're aware of that. That exists in your awareness because you've learned about it. You also are aware, oh, this is a nervous system thing, and this is actually very healthy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to practice down regulatory breathing, get myself nice and down regulated so that I'm able to work with my body to release what is coming through me. At the same time, maybe you start learning about biogeometry and you start learning like, you know what? I really want to have biogeometry in my medicine space. I want to be wearing the pendants. I want to be protecting my energy. Maybe you've done some work in esoteric books and things of that nature and started learning about negative entities. And again, right, like this may sound like homework, but we're not messing with something light here, right? Like this is going to change your lease on reality. And that is not something to take lightly. At the end of the day, have there been many people that have messed around and been okay? Sure. But again, as we learn better, we got to get better, right? And part of being better in the medicine space is making sure that we understand what these medicines' roles are in the human experience and that we are sitting with them and experiencing them as such, right? Coming into the experience of reverence, coming in with respect, right? And being able to understand that I'm not going to blame this plant. Like I see this with cannabis all the time, right? People are unaware of the fact that everything starts internal before it leads to the external. They've never heard the law of correspondence and things like that from hermetics. And so what happens is they're having fun, they're getting high with their friends. And then all of a sudden they feel anxiety and they go, oh my God, cannabis made me anxious, right? And when you're doing that, it's in the plant medicine world, the plants look at you like you're an infant. Like, oh, you haven't even learned to take accountability for yourself yet. So what can we really teach you, right? Like what they have to teach you is so big that like if you're not even willing to take accountability for your own emotions, then you are putting the cart before the horse. And that's why I always say that with the great power that psychedelics bring with them, it begs great responsibility. Like again, when I was in my early 20s, I definitely hit a lot of buttons and found out the hard way a couple of times. And I'm very fortunate that I was able to move through that experience, mostly because I had a background in psychology. So I understood a lot of the inner workings of the mind and things that were going on. I understood trauma and things of that nature. Again, I understand them from a much different angle these days than I did then. It was a much more Western medicine, left brain mentality back then. But at least I had some sort of foundation. I was taking care of my body. I was big on exercise. I had the right diet. I was kind of meditating at that point. I wasn't really like, passionate around it yet. But again, I tell everyone, like, just like you were sharing, right? Like you don't need psychedelics to have this level of experience. They are one avenue, one door you can open to have this type of experience, but you can also have them through other means.
I would say I would take it further. I would say that is not recommended for a lot of people. It is highly likely to have the opposite effect that you're wanting to experience if you don't prepare for these medicine ceremonies with deep reverence and respect and plenty of patience. And the rewards are indescribably beautiful if you do cultivate your ability to capacitate the most exquisite, sublimely beautiful experience that is possible. If you cultivate that and prepare yourself perfectly, the gifts are just beyond the beyond.
I mean, they're beyond words. There's like literally no way to describe them. I still have fun trying to, like I said, right? Like I'll always try, right? My ego will be like, let's try to explain it, and then the awareness that I'm in or the state I'm in is like, you silly goose, when will you learn to just sit here and be in a state of peace and just enjoy, right? And be in bliss. Stop trying to give back to everyone around you all the time and just take this for yourself, and that's been one of the many big lessons I've gotten.
I think a really important question for us to consistently ask ourselves is, why am I doing this? What is my intention? And that's not just with medicine or is with everything. What is your motivation? Are you being motivated actually because of some kind of program that you're running?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it a true, deep, sincere, soul felt, soul led desire to experience more of your true, authentic essence?
I love that.
Ask yourself this constantly. And with every decision that you're looking at, whether it's be, moving to a new city or country, starting a business, trying psychedelics, relationships, so many things, you know, that's maybe the work of this time of what we're calling the great remembering, is remembering who we really are versus when we're running programs and operating out of our MK Ultra mind control programs versus our true authentic self. And if you bring your sincere true authentic self and you go into medicine ceremony with that really pure sincere intention, then the medicine can really assist you properly. Otherwise it kind of just amplifies everything, and it can stir up a big hot mess of experiences, and it can be simply overwhelming if you don't have the ability to digest and integrate and capacitate everything that is being stirred up.
Definitely. The analogy that just came to me is it's kind of like a blender, right? Like a blender can make an amazing smoothie for you, but if you don't know how to do it, right, and use it, you could also cut your hand off, right, or really injure yourself with the blades. You could forget to put the cover on and make a gigantic mess, right? So like, I 100% agree with what you're saying that, again, these medicines, like they can open up a real lot. And I'm curious for you, Dr. Edith, like, when you had that ayahuasca ceremony, considering you have so much background in so many of the foundational elements we spoke of, right? Qigong, meditation, breath work. Also, you're very self-aware just in general, right? You do coaching work and all these things. What was that experience like for you? Was it similar to the Qigong experience you had? Was it different in certain ways? Like, how would you describe it, even though it's beyond words and it's hard to describe? What would be your best way of describing it with human words?
Wow, it's a bit tricky to encapsulate it in the less than half hour that we have left. Well, the ceremony that we experienced started with a tobacco ceremony first. And the working with the tobacco, I experienced the most exquisitely beautiful remembering of all the wonderful boys and men in my life, because the tobacco has this sacred masculine energy. And I had a beautiful NDE of every boy and man that was significant in my life. Back to junior high school, the very first kid that said, "Oh, Edith, can I hold your hand?" Was just like so beautiful. And so I think we're in this time now where we're bringing all the divinity of our masculine and feminine back into play in our lives. So just that alone was so beautiful for me. And then we had 2 ayahuasca ceremony days. The first day, if I was to encapsulate, the first day was so much purging of all the old stuff that I didn't want to carry anymore. And the medicine just co-created with my intention in a way that was so full of wisdom and so deep and so profound and so delightfully surprising. And because it was my first medicine experience, I know that people do a purging, and I was very surprised that the medicine doesn't want to cause excessive suffering. That the moment that I felt that nausea come on, I would surrender fully, lean fully into it. And it sure helps to have given natural birth at home twice, to know what intensity feels like, and to know that pain and suffering is optional, that we can go fully into that intensity instead of guarding and gripping. That is the paradox. Is like the more you resist it, the more intense. And they say the more you resist, the more it persists, or that which you resist persists. So it was very much a practice of that in medicine ceremony, to lean into the moment I dropped into and tuned into what that discomfort sensation was. The purge would come so fast. I was shocked by how fast these purges would come, that the medicine was so gentle and kind. She said, just get it out, get it out. So I purged out all my resentments. I purged out unkindness. I purged out small-minded thinking. I purged out all that poisons our relationships in this reality, so many aspects. And there was a certain moment in which we saw a soul contract that I did not consciously nor willingly agree to in my family lineage system. It had to do with money from probably a couple generations ago. And so in this lifetime, I've always had this theme of strongly, almost like fiercely saying, the reality of the money system here, that this conviction that there's got to be a better way, there's got to be a better way. And then in ceremony, we were able to see that, oh, I didn't consciously or willingly incarnate into that energy, right? On some level, we all choose. Hannah Maria has studied with many different plants. They sing these medicine songs called Icaros during ceremony. They sing continuously the whole time. And she studied with the sequoia tree. And the sequoia tree taught her all these higher laws and taught her this very precise medicine song that you can invoke the highest authority to clean every sin soul contracts. And when we encountered that soul contract and she started singing, it was blinding white light came into the ceremony space. She became this huge winged angel of a being, and she sang and she sang and she sang. It was the fullest, whatever is the opposite of half-heartedness. Like there was nothing half-hearted about it. I felt that she was gonna sing, and all these beings came through to pour light and love until this soul is completely freed of that energy. And so after that energy got freed, there was, you're right, this somatic experience that for someone that's unprepared would freak out, because your whole body starts shaking to release that energy now. But because if you've had some of these holistic healing experiences, you know that, like, oh, okay, you surrender completely to that whole body physiological response to know that it is beautiful and beneficial, and you do not freak out. Not only that, you observe it with pure appreciation and gratitude, And so there was so many things that happened on that first day, but the purging of all that poisons our lives, all that poisons our relationships, the cleaning of family lineage soul contracts. And I saw how when one of us do the work, it ripples backwards and forwards in time. And I saw that ripple. I saw the generational cleaning of the energies. And this is the time where we have the tools available, we have the consciousness available, where we can ripple through, as the natives say 7 generations backwards and forwards. The work that we do is so not just for us, it ripples across time and space. And so that was just the preparatory work of opening the circuitry to what was to transpire the next night, which was the final night, where my intention was, please show me how to lay my life down to be of the highest pure service. I'm ready. Show it to me. And so in that night, it's hard to talk about it without tearing up. The medicine came in and showed me these exquisitely beautiful patterns of flowers and mandalas and geometries. And so it started like this. The medicine time is about 5.5 hours. You start after it's dark, and it's like around 9 p.m. until 2:30 a.m. or something like that, And so I also had a bunch of questions I wanted to get clarity about, such as, like, what is the difference between discernment and judgment? What is trust all about? What is faith all about? I had a whole pile of questions. I talked to the medicine. I said, I don't know if you can handle my pile of questions. And most of all, show me how to lay my life down to be of the highest, purest service. And if you can give me clarity about all these other things, I would be so grateful to deepen into the clarity. And so the medicine showed me beautiful mandalas. And then I started looking like, wow, it's so beautiful. Where is all this geometries coming from? And she showed me this this heart glow. The heart started glowing and glowing and glowing and glowing, and it was so exquisitely beautiful. And I experienced what it's like to create purely from a heart space. No thought, no preconceived ideas or concepts, just purely from the innocence, like a child, the innocence of our heart. And so she let me play like this for a while. And I just played and played and played and played. I was like, wow, that there was the direct experience. So it wasn't this idea, right? The direct experience of having no thought, just the pulsation of love and purity of the heart, and how potently, powerfully, and beautifully it creates out of just pure joy and delight. So then finally she let me play for a while. And it's interesting because we had one other friend in that ceremony space, and this medicine does this amazing thing of like, if someone's having an intense experience, you'll have a gentler experience, and then when you're having an intense experience, they'll have a gentler experience, so that it's like this divine symphony orchestra that I'm just totally blown away by. So after playing with this heart mandalas for a period of time, she said, okay, now what would you like to do with this? What would you like to do with this ability? And I went back to the intention. Please show me how to lay my life down to be of the purest service, of the highest service. Show me. And she said, are you sure? Sure? And when I acknowledged and said, yes, I'm committed to this, that's when I died. I experienced dying of myself, all my identity. And with that dying, somehow, because of having practiced different things, I was curious and open to experience death. At the end of it was complete silence, stillness, which was so interesting because in the medicine space, there is songs, ikaros the whole time. And Anna Maria and her husband, they co-lead these ceremonies. They got the memo. Everybody got the memo. It was complete silence. It was the only time in the whole ceremony where it was like a pin drop silence. Out of that silent stillness rose and emerged this energy. And the medicine started showing me, okay, you want to feel and experience what it's like to lay your life down to be of the purest service? Let's show it to you. And the energy of Kuan Yin emerged out, this pure compassion, and blossoms of lotus flowers came from the root. A huge, beautiful, perfuming open of lotus flowers in the heart, and a smaller one in the head. And this lotus flower kept opening and opening and opening and opening and opening and opening. And gradually it was this experience of how our hearts, the purest intention of love and compassion, it perfumes out, and how this can be of the highest service. And there was a part of my personality self that was kind of in the background, just reviewing like, wow, in this lifetime and in other lifetimes, because I have recall of other lifetimes, there was one specific one that I tap into a lot, where I was a Qigong master that lived till very old and spent decades in complete retreat as a man. And so I remembered that lifetime when I did the 11-day darkroom retreat. I recalled and remerged and integrated with that lifetime. I started tapping into the cultivations of lifetimes in order to capacitate and hold this exquisite state of pure stillness and peace. And I understood, not cognitively, but through direct experience, how our state of being, holding this authentic state of pure peace and pure love and pure tranquility and stillness, is of high potency service to the world. It's like it looks like you don't care, but that's the most caring state that you can bring, of the purest sincere love and stillness and peace. And so this experience of what it's like to radiate and waft out the perfumes of love and peace. I said, okay, well, ceremony just started. There's this voice. I was like, can I hold this state for over 5 hours? And the answer was like, okay, let's go. Let's go. Let's hold this state for 5 hours. And then suddenly the music started, and then the scene changes, and suddenly I'm in this room where there's avalanches of abundance of gold and gems pouring through, pouring through, pouring through. And the medicine said, hey, what would you like to do with this? And I said, well, I told you, I'm laying my life down to be of the pure service. How can I channel these resources to build the new civilization, to build the solutions? And so she said, are you sure? Again, be careful what you asked for. And I said, yes, I'm sure. And it was this like so much resources and abundance channeling through. And I understood in that moment our relationship with money, that there is infinite abundance trying to flow through, except that we block it. And when we block it, we stifle it. In this case, I could see how it becomes suffocating, how wealth can become suffocating unless we open the channels to channel it through into the solutions, just like waterfalls and rivers. And it's water. It just needs to flow. It will get putrid and stagnant, and it will hurt you if you don't allow the flow to continue. And so I said, show me how to channel all of this into the beautiful new civilizations, the solutions, show it to me. And then boom, the scene changed, and she took me into a space where codes upon codes upon codes upon codes upon codes of where we're going with the future of mankind. What are we doing here? And I'm so glad you said humor, because she kept showing me humor and laughter and comedy is core to the building of the new civilization. And she showed me codes, as you know, as the audience may know, I'm deeply interested in family and parenting and the new paradigms of education, building the solutions out of this new consciousness. So she granted all these codes, essentially saying, okay, you raise your hand to volunteer your vessel to help anchor in these codes at this time. And then now you will hold a set of codes that you can then unpack and unzip and share with the world and have conversations such as this one and other ones where we interact with other carriers of new civilization codes, and together we lock in all of the multidimensional jigsaw puzzles to actually build the solutions together. And so this lasted for about, I don't know, time is so strange in the ceremony space, but it was about half of the time. So 2+ hours of literally code scramble, where by the end it was hard to remember my name. I remember there were beautiful children that I want to go back to, that I want to make sure they're okay, even if I'm completely incapacitated by what just happened in my circuitry. I wanted to make sure that those children are okay. A bunch of other beautiful things transpired after this towards the end of the ceremony, including my one friend that was sharing ceremony space. They encountered soul contract that he was needing to clean and clear and rescind. And when that happened, there was a call across all of creation, the cosmos, that every soul deserves to be free. And this soul is invoking its liberation and freedom right now. All hands on deck. And suddenly, Hannah Maria starts singing that song where it was just white light, huge energies. And all that could happen was I got knocked back and a fire hose of the purest, fiercest love that says every soul deserves to be free. Liberation right now. And the love that was something I never experienced, that could be so fierce like a fire hose. And the energy got cleaned and cleared, and the soul contract was rescinded, and everything calmed down. And I thought, wow, I did not understand love. That love can be so gentle and innocent and playful, like in the beginning. That love can be pure, full of wisdom, full of depth, full of peace and tranquility. And love can be soft and gentle, and love can be intense and fierce. All of it, the full spectrum. And after that transpired, Hannah Maria sang a song that kind of reintegrated and cleaned all of my chakras. And I experienced this exquisitely beautiful, orgasmic energy that was our natural state of bliss that rises up from the lower chakras and gets refined and mists up all the way to the top. And it blesses like a nourishing fountain of beautiful energies, every level of our being. And then as the medicine starts winding down, I saw all of our friends and colleagues, beings like you, beings like the ones that are listening to this podcast. I saw the exquisitely beautiful souls, the pure, pure souls that we're in community with, and the blessings of all of us being connected at this special time. And it was so beautiful. I saw specific friends and colleagues and the purity of their heart, just like you with your partner. And I started weeping and weeping and weeping at all the beautiful hearts, the beautiful souls that I'm so blessed to share this life journey with. And so in that case, I started having personal love with each and every friend and colleague, and the experience of both the impersonal and the personal experiences of pure love. And so the medicine was so intense. I came to realize that it took this entire lifetime, maybe multiple lifetimes of practices and qigong and cultivation and somatic work and so many things in order to get to the point where this experience was possible to be capacitated, is the best word, in this vehicle. And that there was exactly the reason I waited decades to bring this deeply respectful, honoring approach to the medicine. And I feel so blessed that I found the perfect guides. I had the perfect experience, and now a whole new octave of refinement. Even though I've spent arguably my whole life working on these cultivations, there's a whole other octave of refinement now, of transducing this energy and these codes and articulating with a greater level of depth and understanding, not through reading books or even listening to podcasts, through our own direct experience, right? Like, this is the thing. Listening to podcasts gives us an inkling of what is possible. And then we have our own direct experience, and it's a whole different, now is game on, and then how do you then integrate it, come back to this life and 2 feet grounded on the earth with this understanding, appreciation, and perspective. Now do life. Now life is the true ceremony. Now you'll be given these challenges, and because you can capacitate a greater depth of love and wisdom, now there's a whole next octave of life that is available to you. And now I think I'll spend maybe the next decade now integrating this experience and living into the wisdom and love and gifts and insights, the blessings that the medicine gifted to me. It would be disrespectful and dishonoring if I didn't take years or decades to fully live into it. And that's the journey I'm on. And all the new workshops and contents and retreats are imbued with a whole new octave of energy and experiences.
Wow, Edith, that was absolutely incredible. I mean, like, every aspect. I mean, first of all, how much you remember as well from the experiences, that speaks to your level of awareness as well. And, Hannah Maria and her partner are such angels, like when I hung out with them for a brief moment, I saw her talk as well. I just knew right away. I'm like, yep, those people are the real deal, and it's so important to find the right guide, because in today's world, I was just talking about this with Sam, who you got to meet briefly before our podcast, but he runs an ayahuasca center, and we are all talking about the same thing here, right? That it's so much more important to look at the energy of the person who is facilitating the event, right? The ceremony, and also like how the medicine was brewed, where it was grown. Like, those are the things that most people don't think about, they're mostly like, how much does it cost? Is everything included with it? And again, I'm not going to say those things are bad, right? They're just certain things, right? And so for me, that was the big shift, especially with cannabis as well, is realizing that, not all medicine is grown equally. It's created equally, right? But it's not grown equally because, there's a very specific reason why people like a Hannah Marie or a Hamilton Souther or, any of these people I look up to, there's a reason why they spend years and decades and, all of this time purifying themselves before they start to be able to share the medicine with others. Because if you are, let's say, growing cannabis, right, but you're growing it from a state of fear, anxiety, frustration, anger, whatever, and then you're supplying that as medicine to other people, well, all you're really doing is putting your own shit on other people. And that's one of the many things we could talk about within this realm of qualitative aspects of medicine work. But I think it's just so beautiful because I get a lot of these exact same downloads, and I call them ideas, when I'm connecting with cannabis or other psychedelics, which is, life is not an observation sport. Or as Joe Dirt said, life's a garden and you got to go dig that shit, like intellect is great. If you're interested in, say, something like ayahuasca, right? You can look up what it is. You can look up and be like, oh, I guess you're going to purge when you're on it, right? You can look up different centers, get reviews, etc. But even if you dive deep into the biology of ayahuasca, even if you're an ayahuasca expert, right, in terms of teaching, but you've yet to have experiences, you're an infant, right? Because there's no degree of intellectual knowledge that will make up for direct experience or a lack thereof of direct experience. And I think that's one of the main challenges the world is going through right now, is that people, quote unquote, know a lot of things, which in reality is completely hilarious because, like you, I'm sure you realize too, the point of being here is not to ever think that you need to know anything or that you will know anything, right? That's a very humbling thing to recognize that, again, subjectively, discernment versus judgment, right? The way I see that is judgment is cast from a state of ego, right? Like, oh, look at this person doing that. I would never do that, right? Whereas discernment is more for yourself subjectively and say, you know what, maybe ayahuasca worked great for Dr. Edith, but I'm just not feeling it for me. I'm not saying she's bad or good or positive, negative, whatever. I'm just saying for myself, my own subjective experience, this either does or does not feel in alignment. And so the same way that works, being able to study these things, right? But also know that the experience of them is the real thing, and I kind of talk about it often in this way that you can go read about an apple, you can learn about the different varieties, you can learn about pectin and all the ingredients, but no thing is going to teach you about what an apple is better than going and actually eating an apple. And, what I love about intellect, and I kind of say this, or the idea I got is that the heart must come before the mind. But the mind is important, right? Because like say, for instance, what you were going through, right? Show me how I can best be of a clean service, right? Be a perfect vessel for the most service. Well, you may get shown certain things or experience certain things and then go, oh, okay. Like, let's say in a linear fashion, you were like, oh, they want me to go learn how to be an auto mechanic. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to use my mind to figure out when I'm going to go to classes, what I'm going to learn, what I'm excited about, but the heart is going to be leading first, because if we just pile on knowledge, right, we'll fall into the thirst trap that we know things, and then we'll start preaching from that place of actually not knowing anything, right?
I think that's actually how this game works, how they set it up.
Yeah.
Whoever
Yeah.
they are, they set it up that way so that, because once we have the direct experiences, like, ooh, the gloves are off, like we know how to start working with this reality system here now, and that makes us hard to control and kind of dangerous, dangerous in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
We become so audacious and so fierce because we know ourselves now. Right. So whereas if they trick us into thinking that intellectual knowledge is supreme, finger quotes, I think, therefore I am. That's the biggest psyop of ever, right? Like all this thinking, how's that working for people, right? All this hyper overthinking versus knowing and being. And I think what's happening, I feel, I know, I experience what is happening right now in this time. And actually this conversation you and I are having, Ryan, is the integration, as you say, leading from our heart, from the arising of our deepest soul essence, informing and infusing into everything that we do, and bringing into congruence, stop bullshitting ourselves, bringing into congruence our visionary seeingness, our inner knowingness, our beingness, and our doingness, and bring that all into congruence right now. So much of the spiritual talk is just like, they sounds good. There's a lot of dogma, a lot of beautiful words, and it's like, but how is your life? What are you actually doing that is in congruence with all these beautiful words and values that you espouse? And that's where that's the integration practice that is so profound and so much where the work actually lies.
Yeah, I could not have said that better myself. There's a guy that I know named Cal Callahan, and I love him because his podcast is called the Great Unlearn Podcast. And I really feel like that's what we're talking about here, right? We're actually talking about subtracting rather than adding. And I think that's one of the big things that for me anyway shifted when I went from a left brain to more of a right brain state, is that I started realizing, like in those mushroom experiences, right? When I take everything away, I have all the answers. I am at peace. I have bliss, right? But when everything gets piled back on, right? Not that everything is necessarily bad, right? That's what a lot of the work, as I see it, is, right? Is making sure that what you're adding to the equation of yourself is leading to really positive outcome. But again, at the end of the day, like, if we just try to keep adding cars into the metaphorical traffic jam that exists in our being already, when we're malwared and have viruses and these kind of things, right? Not real viruses, because those probably don't even exist. But I'm talking about kind of the Watiko that Paul Levy talks about. Again, like, it's kind of a thirst trap in society, right? Oh, if you don't feel good, go take a pill, go do something about it, right? Rather than get still, get silent, subtract from the equation. I think that is, like, for me, what's really worked for me. I won't project on anyone else, but it sounds like we're in alignment on, that working for both of us anyway.
Yeah, as you know, a huge topic of mine is the education topic. The birthing. A lot of people say, "Oh, we don't want to do government schooling," and because it's just a propaganda programming machine. And I agree, you agree. I'm sure all your audience agree. But what is true education? What is the consciousness that we want to bring to build a more beautiful experience of education and upbringing for our children? And I'm sure your audience has heard about unschooling, and they say that when you get out of the rigid mind control system and you start self-directed learning, unschooling, there's a deschooling process that is worth honoring and appreciating. And they say, perhaps give yourself 1 month per year that you're in the school system to decompress from that rigidity of that mind control, the boxes that you've put your experience of life into, and dismantle those boxes. And it can be an uncomfortable process. And all of our transformational journey is like that. There's a deprogramming, letting go of these mind control programs. And then what arises is your sincere, true, authentic joys and passions and your gifts and your abilities, to give it breathing room for it to rise up again. And then for that to be the motivating energy that inspires your actions, your projects, your businesses, and so on. So it's not an easy journey, and it requires tremendous surrender and faith and deep cultivation and deep inner listening to really attune to where my actions and behaviors motivated from a sincere heart space, and where is it still running MK Ultra mind control programs. To keep discerning those. Yeah.
100%. You'd love my buddy Robert Forte. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's getting on more podcasts now. He's kind of been in the dark for quite a while, but he was personal friends with Timothy Leary, Aldous Huxley, Albert Hoffman, Terrence and Dennis McKenna, Alexander Shulgin, like all the greats of the psychedelic, world, if they say that, right? So, like, he's very big on MK Ultra never actually ending. And that a lot of the last 60 years has been them specifically putting psychedelics into mainstream channels that make them seem dumb, scary, terrifying, demonic, etc. So that when people connect with them, they are unconsciously, right, imbuing them with that frequency. And so, I think you'd love having a conversation with him, because when I had a conversation with him, I was like, yeah, this is definitely what I felt in the world of cannabis specifically. You look at Cheech and Chong, you look at Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, and it's basically just like, this drug is just for idiots, basically. When in reality, cannabis is such a beautiful medicine and has been here co-evolving with human beings for millennia. But again, like, we have to be really aware of what we're putting into our mind, because it comes out, especially in psychedelics. I mean, that was one of the first things I learned when I did psychedelics. It's like, well, I'm never watching a horror movie again in my life. Like, why would I ever imbue myself with that frequency? So like now when Rachel and I decide to watch a movie, we watch rom-coms, just romantic comedies. They're silly, they're cheesy sometimes, but I always leave feeling better than I sat down. And that's the only entertainment I want in my life, is just love stories, comedy, things like that, that at least I know if I'm going to spend my time being entertained, that I walk away with some positivity coming out of it, something to charge my battery with rather than to keep me in that state of fear that the negative polarity thrives on. And so they want to keep us in that state. So it's so amazing.
This conversation is really going full circle into how we started about Qigong. Everything in life I see as a Qigong practice is about energy cultivation and energy mastery. What happens energetically from a psychedelic visionary lens? You literally see, if you watch a horror movie, pieces of your energy getting fragmented, and strings and strands of your energy goes into the movie and the story and gets hooked and entangled with that fear-based energetic of what's going on in the movie. When you start to see, sense, feel, know the energetic mechanics that are at play, you're like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing that. And no, reclaim my energy. And that's why they call it in Qigong, they always say, and now it's become a popular saying, wherever your attention goes, your qi follows. Wherever your attention goes, your chi follows. So that's why they keep saying, like, pay attention. Well, what you're paying with something way more expensive than money here. You're paying with your energy. You're paying with the purity of your soul essence in these situations. So there's a advanced practice that is at play now for us to cultivate this awareness. It's like, oh, okay, like these entertainment, the media, the channels, the podcasts, the books that we listen to, all of that, there's an energy cultivation that we can be aware of now. And it's a beautiful time because many of us are waking up to this right now.
100%. It really is the Force Awakens happening in real life. And I feel so grateful that our souls decided to embark on this journey at this time, because I don't know if there's ever been a more exciting time in history. You know, Aaron talks about this, how he'll have people be like, I wish I got to live back in the day when Jesus was around, or I wish I got to do this. He's like, are you guys silly? Like, this is the most exciting time there's ever been, you know, like, because again, like, so many of us are remembering, but we still are existing within a collective that is in different stages of remembering. And again, no judgment, just again, like, it's all perfectly divine in the eyes of God or creator. But, you know, I think it's so amazing that we get to share these things and that they're becoming more and more normal, right? Like, to use that term that doesn't really exist, but they're becoming more and more mainstream now, talking about these things. And Dr. Edith, it's been amazing diving in with it. I can't believe we've already gone an hour and 15 minutes. I mean, this flew by. I can't wait to have you back on. We got a lot more to talk about, but I want to make sure that I give you an ample opportunity to share with people where they can find you, where they can find all of your offerings, all the work you're doing. You know, again, I'll link it all in the show notes, but tell the people where they can find you and connect with you.
Yeah, thank you. It's so much joy sharing these kinds of stories, and it's so delicious and special that I get to have a conversation at this level with a friend that really gets it. So thank you for being that kind of friend and colleague, and thank you to our audience for inviting me into your home, especially a crew like this that is very discerning about the content that they engage with. I feel very blessed that you've invited me into your home, into your car, or into your trail walk or your gardening project. Wherever you are, I'm sending you so much love and gratitude and appreciation. And if you enjoy this level of conversation, my website is dredithubuntu.com. That's Dr. Edith, EDITH, Ubuntu, UBUNTU.com. And when you go there, you'll see various offerings. There's one particular one called Luminous Life Mastery Beyond Awakening. It's a program that I started recently, and you can click there. There's a free masterclass there about exactly this conversation. What happens after a spiritual awakening experience, whether it's induced by breathwork, by Qigong, by an NDE experience, by psychedelics, by float tank, whatever it is. Many of us have had different degrees of these experiences. And now the real work begins of how do we live into this awakened state of being and imbue our lives, our relationship with energy, time, money, all these things, like to do life, raise children, run businesses from this state of being is no joke. It's a deeply advanced practice. So if that interests you, there's a free masterclass there that you can check out called Luminous Life Mastery Beyond Awakening. And for those that are interested in the education and parenting conversations, whether you have kids right now or you're an educator or you're considering starting a family, the website for that is luminousrevolution.com. And there's a whole program that takes you on a deep inquiry and soul searching journey, exploring what is education? What are we doing here? What is the purpose of education? And how do we want to bring a new consciousness to raise the next generation of what I call luminous kids? And so luminousrevolution.com is where you can find a whole journey there to explore this topic. Yeah, and keep in touch often to my newsletter so that we can stay in touch.
Yes, I love that. Dr. Edith, thank you so much. And I have one last question that I ask everyone that comes on the show. And that question is this, right? I think we've done a really good job of answering it already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Let's say someone listens to this episode and they're really excited to check out psychedelic medicines in their own life. What is the one piece of advice you would offer them to allow them to use and utilize the proper discernment in choosing whether or not these medicines are right for them at this time in their lives?
Wow. I believe that this whole conversation has deepened into the appreciation of that already. If I were to encapsulate, I would go back to something I mentioned earlier, which is like, why do you want to do the medicine? Really check in. Is it from a truly pure-hearted, sincere place? Or is it because you want to escape, the intensity of this life? And to really tune into, is the guide that is facilitating this journey the right guide with the purest energy? Look at not just their websites, but how they do life, how they show up not in front of the camera, but behind the scenes, how they conduct their business, the testimonials of others and what people share about their experience with this guide, and really, really tune in deeply to make sure that it's of the purest energy that's aligned for you, and to be deeply patient with it, to recognize what we've been sharing with this whole conversation, the cultivation practices that is, whether it's Qigong and somatic practices and all the different self-care healing practices, so that your system can be attuned to the highest possibilities of these energies and can actually capacitate all the intense recalibration and purging and rewiring that can occur in these medicine spaces. So be deeply respectful, deeply honoring of it, and then be open to the most exquisitely, sublimely beautiful experience that's possible.
Dr. Edith, perfectly stated. Guys, I know you enjoyed this episode. Make sure you give Dr. Edith a follow. She is absolutely amazing. She is decoupling so many different areas of the world, whether it be education, whether it be how we view life, how we experience it. If there's one thing I know, even though Dr. Edith has done so many amazing things already, she's just getting started. So if you guys enjoyed the show, of course, we'd love a 5-star review. Helps to get the show out to more listeners, which we are so grateful for. And wherever you guys are in the world, I hope you're having the best day of your entire life. And until next time, may the source be with you always. Peace.